The advice provided in this podcast is general in nature. For your specific situation, you will need to get in contact with your local OT, vehicle modifier or mobility dealer and set yourself up with an assessment or a trial. Trials really do put you in the driver's seat, so get out there and get one going. Before we get started, we just want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible: Mobility Engineering, Driving Well and Williams OT. This show takes time and money to put together, and we are forever grateful for their passion for our industry. Okay, enough of the business. Let's get on to the interview with Jenny and Brad.
G'day and welcome to the Drive Able podcast. I'm Brad Williams from Williams OT, and joining me as always at the moment is Jenny Gribben from Driving Well. How are you today, Jenny?
I'm well. How are you, Brad?
Yeah, very good. I'm excited because today we have Dr. Beth Chill from the Institute of Driver Health coming back to join us. For people that might not know Beth, Beth is an OT driver assessor and licensed driving instructor. She's a lecturer and researcher at Western Sydney University. She runs training for occupational therapists, other health professionals and driving instructors as well, in the process of OT driver assessments and rehabilitation, and she's been doing that since 2006. She's an extremely busy lady, but we're very fortunate that she's come on to this podcast as a guest today. But also she was a guest in episode 44, where she talked about how to become a driver trained OT. So if that takes your fancy, make sure you go back and listen to episode 44 and meet Beth in that episode as well. Today, we've got Beth on to talk about P-Drive. What is P-Drive? How does P-Drive work? What's the benefit of P-Drive? How do we use P-Drive? What is P-Drive is the main question. So let's get her on to unpack P-Drive and how driver-trained OTs can use P-Drive. Jenny, are you excited about this one?
I am. I think it's once we get into the conversation and we reveal what P-Drive is, it's a scoring tool to score your on-road assessments.
You've given it away. I was holding the suspense.
Yeah.
Righto.
I think we need a little miniature grab there. But I think it's just such a fantastic tool that OT driver assessors can be using in their practice. And I know Williams OT are using it, and Driving Well OT are using it in practice now, or we're about to finish our training process. And I think it's just going to be a real significant value add to the way we run our assessments and give our outcomes.
Well, I can give you confidence in that, Jenny. We did our training a few years ago with P-Drive. It's changed the way that we practiced as OT. So have confidence in the process, and let's learn all about it by inviting Beth on now. Let's get underway.
Let's get into hearing from Beth.
Driving Well Occupational Therapy loves working with people of all ages and with all kinds of medical conditions to safely give them the opportunity to explore their driving goals.
Hi everyone, today we have Dr. Beth Chill, occupational therapist and driver assessor on the podcast. She's also a trainer of OTs in the driving world as well. G'day Beth, can we get you to give yourself a little bit more of an introduction and where you work and what kind of work you're doing in the OT space?
Yeah, so hello everyone, and thank you Brad and Jenny for inviting me to the session today. So I am, an occupational therapy driving assessor and driving instructor, but my main job at the moment is I work as a university lecturer at Western Sydney University 4 days a week, and then on my 5th day I run Institute of Driver Health and Drive Safe Diagnostics. And so I guess my worlds are in teaching and research, and then also in test development and marketing.
We were just saying as we were talking to you off air, I don't know how you keep up with everything that you do. You're a very, very busy lady in this space. You're on the National Driving Task Force and multiple levels within this world of ours. But the thing that we're getting you on today to talk about is your research about P-Drive. What is P-Drive? Can you let us know what P-Drive is?
Yes, so P-Drive, well, that stands for Performance Analysis of Driving Ability, so P-Drive, and it's assessment tool. It was developed for occupational therapy driving assessors to use to standardize the on-road assessment process. So when occupational therapy on-road assessments are considered the gold standard way to find out if someone with a medical condition can drive safely or not. But only when it's standardized, when it's got a standardized scoring procedure, a standardized route, a standardized process. So it's valid and reliable and a fair assessment of someone's driving ability. So, and one way you can do that is use an assessment tool to help you with all of that. So P-Drive's a standardized on-road assessment tool that occupational therapy driving assessors can use.
And how long has it been around, Beth?
Yeah, so it was developed in 2008 by Anne-Helen Patamella, so Associate Professor Anne-Helen Patamella. She is the head of school at Karolinska Institutet in Sweden and a long-time driving researcher and academic. And so she developed P-Drive. Back then, she was advised in the development by Anne Fisher, Professor Anne Fisher, who developed AMPS. So a lot of the occupational therapists watching will be quite familiar with AMPS. Well, P-Drive is pretty similar. It's quite a similar approach to assessment as AMPS, but it's for performing on-road, looking at on-road driving performance. And so there's been quite a lot of research done since 2008 by independent researchers, which is good, and by Anne-Helen and myself. I met Anne-Helen when I was doing my PhD at University of Sydney. And she was working there at the time, and I needed a standardized on-road assessment to do to use for my Drive Safe Drive Aware research, and she kindly let me use P-Drive, but it was Swedish. A lot of the research had been done in Scandinavia, so she helped me convert it to well, it was already converted to English, but just to convert it to the Australian and New Zealand context, which is a little different. So I felt very fortunate to work with Anne-Helen. She's absolutely lovely, and I really like this test. Yeah.
So how did you
research have you done?
Yeah.
What research have you done? What have you been up to in this area to turn it into something that we can utilize in Australia?
Yeah, well, some good research had already been done on the test. The problem for occupational therapy driving assessors is there's not a lot out there in terms of standardized assessment tools that are practical and reliable and valid. And good for all different kinds of contexts. And like quite a few systematic reviews have looked at what's actually out there and found the tests aren't that great, really. There's a couple of promising ones, but P-Drive has been identified as one of the potentially gold standard on-road assessment tools. So yeah, so that's a good one. And you asked me what we've been doing in terms of research for the tool. Sorry, can I have that question again? I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that's fine. I was saying, what research have you been involved in regards to making it better for Australia? Have you standardized it for Australia? What have you done to be able to make it usable from Scandinavian to Australia?
Yeah. All right. So some good research has been done on the test, and cutoff scores have been set for the Scandinavian context. Independent researchers have identified it to be a potentially gold standard on-road assessment, but there's no cutoff scores set for Australia and New Zealand because driving conditions over here are quite different to Scandinavia. So and also it's just good to confirm cutoff scores and so on for our local context. Try the tool out with the local Australian and New Zealand driving environments. So we did that as part of the Drive Safe Drive Aware research, and and just got some really excellent data. We implemented P-Drive into 10 driving clinics in Australia and New Zealand, and I was very happy to find that this cutoff scores we set for Australia and New Zealand are very close to those set for Scandinavia. So that was good.
So that work is available now, is it, Beth?
P-Drive?
Yeah, the cutoff scores in the Australian context, that's all ready for OTs to start using in practice here.
Yeah, that's right. So a publication has been put out recently in the Occupational Therapy Journal of Research in the US, where the cutoff scores have been published. And so the version for Australia and New Zealand is not very different from the Scandinavian version. There's just 2 questions that are different because road rules are obviously different between countries. It's just a couple of items have been dropped, but the cutoff scores are the same pretty much. And yeah, you can just, the way you get to use pDrive is you need to be trained, because we need to make sure that the person administering the test is doing it in the standardized way, and we calibrate them actually. We use a process to check that they're going to be scoring correctly with the test so that everyone's on the same page. Yeah, so and the way you do that is you do a course. It's a course that's just self-directed online, so you just do it as convenient to you. It's 2 1-hour, I guess you'd say, packages, podcasts, training packages, that are pre-recorded. And then there is a bit of a process for the OT then to become calibrated, if you want me to describe that. It's a bit more in detail.
Well, what it means is that I wanted to ask you a question about what's the importance of it being standardized compared to not? What's the benefit for OTs doing it? Now, I'm going to put my hand up. I've got a bias on that question, and it's an unscripted question because I am trained in pDrive, and Jenny, you are as well, I believe, and implementing it as well. I can give my side of why it's so important, but I thought I'd ask you the question: why is standardized so important for outcomes? I know you've said it's the gold standard, but can we unpack that a little bit more in regards to why a standardized score compared to observation, feeling, I guess, from observations that you see in the pre-drive, the initial assessment? Why is a standardized assessment score so important? And can you unpack a little bit more as a follow-on question?
Well, researchers have long recognized that just relying on like a gestalt, sort of some observations, a bit of a feeling to decide whether the outcome of an on-road assessment is a pass or a fail or lessons, that's not really adequate. The problem is that different assessors will have different priorities. One assessor might be very focused, you've got to do blind spot checks, that's a real safety issue. And then another assessor might be more focused on, look, that's not so important, but this other thing is really important. And everyone's going to have a different approach. And the problem is our clients want to be able to have a fair assessment of their driving ability. They should be able to turn up to any clinic in Australia, and regardless of the tester and the location, they want to be able to sit the same test, which is fair and equitable, and not have those differences between, you know, this testing person is nice and easy, everyone should go to them, they pass everybody, and so on. So, and also when we have our decisions questioned, we want to be able to, well, number one, have our decisions legally defensible. So if someone says, well, why did you take my license away? That's a big thing. Sometimes they challenge our decision by appealing to the licensing authority. Sometimes we end up in court as expert witnesses trying to defend our position. And so we really, we just need to show that we've done the best thing we could do to make sure this test was valid, standard, reliable. We need consistent results across all of us. And also, when someone has a medical condition, like a stroke or a brain injury, we're assessing their driving, but we want to make sure that they're making that test is rigorous enough to identify if they are going to have a problem with any of those skills that they need for driving. So it needs to be complex enough and unmask at-risk driving behaviours that someone with a stroke or brain injury might have. I think there's some of the reasons. Yeah.
Look, that's absolutely fantastic. And thanks very much for unpacking that for us. You mentioned that stroke or dementia or something like that is some of the clientele groups that it can be used for. But can it be used for any disability or medical condition by OTs? Can we use it for learner drivers with autism? We've had a few autism podcasts recently. Is it an area where we can use it for learner drivers, beginner drivers? Can we use it for older drivers, end of life, deciding whether driving's still appropriate for someone? Can it be used across the whole lot?
It can. Now it's always a little more tricky with when you're introducing brand new modifications into a vehicle, or when you've got a beginning driver, say, that's never driven or maybe driven just for a few hours. You can still use P-Drive, but for those people, you know that you're going to be giving them an intervention program. P-Drive will provide you with a baseline assessment, but its best use is in a test whether the client may pass or fail, and who's got a lot of driving experience. Rather than, say, on their first lesson with their steering aid or as a beginner driver. But it's good to have a baseline assessment for those people.
But I guess be used to sort of track progress, Beth.
Track
and
progress.
Experienced drivers that, like an older person that's had a stroke, for example, and we're identifying that they're not safe with their driving performance. And perhaps they need a rehab program that we could then, as you say, have that baseline measurement, and then they go away and do their driver training program, might be some therapy, might be some lessons with the instructor, then the OT on-road reassessment and score again to see if they've now achieved that, the cutoff.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Our research showed that there's what we call it a grey zone. So both the Scandinavian and the Australasian research found that the cutoff score for P-Drive, which is out of 100, is about 85. So anyone above 85 should be okay. Below 85, there's a question mark. But the problem with just having that one cutoff score is people sitting very close to the cutoff score might be miscategorized because they're just a little bit one side or the other. So we've sort of created a grey zone between 81 and 85. And we hope that in the future, P-Drive can be used for people who fall into that grey zone to either work on driving cessation programs or driver rehab. And that's where, as Jenny mentioned, we could perhaps use P-Drive as a baseline assessment, and just to identify those people where you need to little bit extra caution making a decision, maybe some interventions, maybe some cessation programs going in that little bunch in the middle.
I think that's really exciting to have done all that work to bring this tool to Australia, and you've done the research on Australianizing it, if you like, publishing it for context in Australia, that it's now really exciting to have that as a tool to be able to use in further research to actually look at those intervention programs that we're doing for those different driving and medical condition groups that Brad was talking about. And we've got a fantastic tool to actually show and measure change that happens as a result of our intervention programs. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I saw a client the other day, and we tried our absolute best to rehabilitate him. He'd had a stroke and gave him various driving programs, but by the end of it, it became clear that unfortunately he just needed to stop driving. And I mean, it's always very hard to deliver that news to someone. And I think you'd agree, as OT driving assessors, we get no pleasure from taking a license away. We definitely want to keep people driving, rehabilitate them, keep them safe on the road. But sometimes we have to make a decision to take a license away. And that happened to me the other day. And I thought, look, I'll make sure I've got P-Drive in there, because I just have a feeling this decision's going to get appealed in this case, and it has. And so I will have to be going to court for that one. I just feel really reassured that I did P-Drive on this gentleman, and it's in the report, and it's very clear cut, and it supports my decision. So I'm sure if I will end up on the stand getting challenged, it just gives you that extra bit of confidence, I think.
I think even be able to use that to give feedback to the client potentially.
Yes, that's true.
So how does the actual scoring work, Beth? When do you do the scoring, and how long does that take for you to do, and how do you incorporate that into your reporting?
Well, people sometimes think, oh, you must do it in the car on the way as you go, but actually you don't. In the car, you're just observing performance, and then when you get back to the office, you quickly score it up. It only takes me about 5, maximum 10 minutes, I think, but just to score it up at the end of the driving assessment. You're rating driving behaviours on a scale of 4. So 4 is good performance, facilitating safe driving, and a 1 is unsafe driving performance. It's causing critical incidences to happen. So, and there's 25 items in the Australian version. So yeah, you just score all the different driving behaviours up, and then you get a score out of 100 and look at the cutoff scores and see where things land.
Right.
I want to unpack a little bit more is looking at those cutoff scores. You can actually, for me, it helps me um, develop a good rehab plan, because what it does is it breaks it down into steering or pedal control as well. And if you're working with somebody with a physical disability, we can actually go, well, we can see that this score is not good in this area. We've now got a solid score to say it's not meeting the standards. How are we going to rehab that? How are we going to overcome that? Are we going to overcome that with training for the limb that's not working as well? Or are we going to look at a compensatory aid? Are we going to actually put in a spinner knob, or are we going to put in a hand control because the feet don't work as well? It allows us to go, oh, we've got this gut feeling, but now we've got a score, and this score is falling behind the cutoff line. And so what are we going to do about it? And it helps quantify, when the client's saying, oh, yeah, I just need to work on it a little bit more, we can actually go, well, it's not a little bit more, it's actually a lot more. We've got a lot of work to do here. What's the best outcome for you moving forward from here? So those scores not only give from my point of view, not only give a cutoff score for safe driving, not safe driving, but then break it down into its little components that you can actually talk about specifics, and then you can work on those specifics or identify the specifics that are really not safe for somebody. But also you get to highlight the really good things as well, the things that are working really well. It's not just bad overall, you can break it down into good, this is really good, this is not so good, this is the areas that are really letting you down. So for an occupational therapist, it's a really good tool as well to be able to help explain your outcomes. You can look at a score.
It's like telling the client, this is where you are. To be safe and to pass, you need to be here, and that's what this looks like on this particular item, whether it be operational control, observation, lane positioning. There's a lot big focus on the planning and problem solving,
awareness of the driving environment.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we want to unpack here for the P drive itself? But also, I'll lead into another question in case we've covered it all. What's next for the Institute of Driver Health? What else are you working on at the moment?
So we obtained the intellectual property for Drive Safe, Drive Aware last year, and it took us a good while to get that back ready for the market with us. And so we just released it in February. So we've got about 160 users now. So we feel like we've got Australia and New Zealand back, because the test was suspended for a little bit with Pearson. So it's back online and everyone's using it very smoothly and all good.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Beth. What's Drive Safe, Drive Aware? For the people that might be tuning in, what we've unpacked. But what Drive Safe, Drive Aware, in case people aren't sure?
Drive Safe, Drive Aware is an assessment of cognitive fitness to drive for occupational therapy driving assessors to use off-road. It's an iPad app, and it takes about 10 minutes to administer, and you get a little report that you print at the end. It was previously owned by Pearson. Actually, my PhD was converting Drive Safe, Drive Aware from a computer test into a touchscreen test that occupational therapists who are both driver trained and not driver trained can use to predict driving performance in terms of cognitive capacity for driving. And now our next step for that tool, which is a very good tool, is to convert it to driving for the right side of the road and release it in Canada and the US. And so that's going to take a little research to make sure that it's valid for those contexts. So that's our current activity that we're doing in IDH. And what else? And I think that's the main thing.
You're always busy. We actually interviewed you back in episode 44, Beth, back when Ali was doing the podcast with me, before Jenny came in and helped out as well with co-hosting the podcast. But episode 44, we we unpacked lots about the Institute of Driver Health in regards to the training that you're doing for OTs, how to become a driver trained OT. If you're excited about understanding a lot more about that, make sure you go back to episode 44. Just you can search for it on your favorite channels, whether it's YouTube, whether it's even the Facebook or Instagram posts, or have a look at your favorite podcast channel, whether it's Spotify or SoundCloud or your Google Podcast, although Google Podcast is turning YouTube podcast soon, so look out for that changing over. But go and search for episode 44 if you want to understand more about the wonderful things that Beth is doing at the Institute of Driver Health. Before we go on to the next bit, we really want to thank you for the conversation today. And what we're going to do is we're just going to, before we wind up, we're going to hear from our sponsors that make this show possible.
We just want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible: Mobility Engineering, Driving Well, and Williams OT. This show takes time and money to put together, and we are forever grateful for their passion for our industry.
So, Beth, just as we wrap up, OTs are wanting to become trained in P-Drive. We were talking about it a little bit before, but can you just walk us through the process of what they would need to do to get P-Drive trained and start to implement that in their practice?
Well, if occupational therapists are already driver trained, so already occupational therapy driving assessors, then they can just go to the Institute of Driver Health website and just purchase the P-Drive package, which is $600, and then that they'll get all the resources, including the manual, the 2 training sessions. Then they get an individual session with me, and then that, just to wrap everything up and get ready for the next phase, which is moving into doing 10 driving assessments with P-Drive. Then all those results go to Anne Helen, and she calibrates via rush analysis. And gives them feedback on the way they're scoring. Maybe they're scoring a little too easy on one item or a little hard on another. So just some individualized feedback to calibrate them, and then away they go. They're certified to use P-Drive. But we are actually integrating P-Drive into our OT driving assessor course. So from November going forward, it'll be automatically part of the training. We're just going to train everyone in P-Drive as well as becoming an TDA.
So if you're thinking about becoming,
yeah,
if you're thinking about becoming driver trained, I'm going to give you a plug. Have a look at the Institute of Driver Health as well, because there's details on the website there. So if you're an OT, community OT, someone that's been out for a little while and you really want to get into the driving space, then make sure you go and have a look at the Institute of Driver Health. That mightn't be the right place for you. There's other places doing the course around Australia as well. I just need to put that out there as well. So go and have a bit of research. But because we're talking to you, Beth, I thought I'd plug your Institute of Driver Health for you for becoming driver trained as well.
I think it's fantastic that's going to be embedded into the training from November. But I think that also means that everyone else that's already trained and practicing in driving assessment needs to come and do the P-Drive training too. In my business, we actually been going through the training as a group. So that would be, I'm not sure if hopefully you're in agreement with me that that's a good way to go about it, because we were able to sort of walk each other through all of the different modules and sort of talk about the video examples together. And what did you score on this? And I scored this on this. And we're almost at the stage of being able to put all of our results through for calibration, which is exciting. And then we'll be official.
Look, that's exactly how we did it as well, Jenny. So I can recommend that process as well. But even if you're an individual, it's absolutely worthwhile doing it. But the best thing about it, and another plug for you, Beth, is the support that you get. The support that you get through the process is great as well. If you've got any questions, you can go back to Beth and her team there. And the feedback that you get is really eye-opening as well when you're getting that calibrated. You find out whether you're a little bit biased in one area over another area, which is what I found as well. So it's great to help level the playing field, and making sure that you are fair and equitable across all people that come through your service. So it's awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much, Beth, for coming on, but we're not going to let you get away. I know that you answered this question last time, but we're going to see if you've got a different answer for us this time. As we wind up every interview, we ask this final question, and it's about a meaningful memory that you have in a car, because we know that cars are more than just getting from A to B. We've unpacked that through our 80 odd episodes here. And we know that driving is so special to people because it gives so much meaning. What's a memory that you have in a car that is meaningful for you?
I was thinking about this last night with my husband, like, what's meaningful in the car? And he reminded me when we went overseas and we were approaching Paris in our hire car at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We enacted the Chevy Chase movie where we just got absolutely lost. We could see airport signs, but we just went round and round until some local Parisian took pity on us at a service station when we had all the maps out hours later. And he said, do you want me to drive you there? And we just followed him, and we got to the airport at 9 o'clock at night to drive around the center of Paris for hours. So yeah.
No way to see the city.
No, it was
I don't know if that's a positive, meaningful drive, but
it was a funny one. It was a funny one.
Very much so. Very much something to remember. Yes. Our journey in a car. Beth, it's been fantastic again. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing us P-Drive. Jenny and I both believe in it. We think it's great. So I'm putting myself out there as someone who believes in it, and we should be P-Drive trained for sure, so we can be giving the best possible outcomes to our clients. And it takes the guesswork out of your scoring, and you are suggesting someone do this versus doing that, and sometimes it can correct you as an OT too. You might be having a gut feel, but the scores don't add up, so it helps you justify where your thoughts are. So I thank you. I thank you for calibrating it for Australia and bringing it to our shores, and helping us be the best OTs that we can be. So we really thank you for doing it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure coming on today with you guys, and thanks for that wonderful feedback.
Yeah. And
if our listeners want to know more, sorry, Jenny, I cut you off. I think you're going to ask exactly the same question.
I was.
If our listeners want to know more, how do they get in contact with you, Beth?
Probably email is the best. If you just go to the website, you'll see our emails there, but you can contact me, beth@driverhealth.com.au. Just Google me. I'm sure my address will come up. And yeah, we'd be super happy to respond to any questions via email.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks very much, Beth.
See you next time, maybe.
Yeah, another update.
Excellent. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
See you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone. Drive safely.
As we wind up this episode, please remember that the advice provided in this podcast is general in nature. For your specific situation, you will need to get in contact with your local OT, vehicle modifier, or mobility dealer and set yourself up with an assessment or trial. Trials really do put you in that driver's seat.
If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @DriveAblePodcast for more information.